Welcome back to the GM prep of the Abomination Vaults. I am DMSteve, and tonight we are continuing our series of taking a closer look at just what is going on underneath the Abomination Vaults. This episode, we're taking a step further down into the depths to the level that is referred to as the library. First of all, happy Father's Day to all fathers out there, me included. Hope you had a good Father's Day, and hopefully you guys had good barbecues or whatever it is you did for fun. Hopefully it was relaxing. For me, I did a lot of writing and last minute prep for this episode, and I don't know, I feel like I wrote more for this level than I have for any other level before, except for maybe the Atari level, because I had a lot. So, we'll see. We'll see how long this episode takes us tonight. Brace yourselves. Quick reminder for anyone watching live, watching on YouTube, if you're enjoying this content and it's helping you with your campaign, head on over to twitch.tv/DMSteve. You can give us a subscription. If you have Amazon Prime, you can do it at no cost to yourself. We also accept regular subscriptions, and just follows and interact with us on social media. It'll make us happy. Thank you for taking the time to even watch this, and I hope it's actually helping you guys in your campaign. And if it is, definitely let me know, please. Very cool. Let's get started at looking at level 3, the library. So, just a quick review. What's been going on in the Abomination Vaults so far? And the things that I think that are important to highlight in this instance are some of the important story beats that your party may or may not have seen all of these up to this point in the campaign. So, first one, Vollic. Vollic Azrene, the right-hand man of Belcora, the person who made his lenses, the drow occultist who made Borbo, the first mini-boss of this whole arc that we're kind of teasing from level 1. They will show up in level 4 for a showdown. Vollic is a very important key to this first book, and we need to keep him in mind as we go through this level. Secondly, at this point in the adventure, the hero should have a very specific, clear goal at last, which is to stop the lighthouse from attacking again. That means when they're here, they're not just randomly exploring and randomly trying to find, what's going on. They have a goal. They should be trying to find a way to disable this lighthouse, the charging energy that they probably should by now know is coming from beneath. And so, while they're here in this library, they're probably looking for a way to shut it off and or information about how to shut it off. Being that this is a library full of information, it's a perfect place for them to start looking for that kind of stuff. Okay. The other thing to keep in mind, the heroes, your PCs, still have no idea what the true purpose of the lighthouse is, right? So, as far as they know, the lighthouse comes alive and attacks Otari, and that's its purpose. Now, we as GMs, we know that's not the purpose, right? The purpose of the lighthouse is to attack Absalom, the metropolis off in the distance a bit. Otari just is a testing ground, like a bystander, a collateral damage, if you will. And so when they're here, they have a chance to unravel this, but everything in this place should point towards ultimately Absalom being the target if they research it. And also, the small clues from Otari, your PCs may or may not have met the green light on level 2 that leads them through the level, down a secret door, and into this level. But there is this idea that Otari's spirit lingers in this place. If you remember, Otari was killed in the battle with the Rose Guard versus Belcora hundreds of years ago, except for he survived, and he discovered these vaults beneath the surface that the other Rose Guard never knew about. And he died before he could tell anyone. So a spirit is here guiding people towards his body. This takes the place with these dancing green lights that shows the heroes the path he took through the Abomination Vaults and the path that they can use to find his body ultimately. So those are the definite key points that you should keep in mind as we review this level. So, with that being said, let's do a quick overview of the same thing I'd usually do anytime there is a new level is the PDF. So if you have the printed book or you have the PDF, it is on page 35. And this is the Chapter 3 synopsis, which gives us a quick look, almost like a single couple sentence synopsis of what's going to happen in this chapter, and B, the environmental cues that we can use to really set the tone as we're describing things to our character. So as there's lots of box text you can read, but if you're pulling stuff off the cuff, keep these sort of things in mind, like review them right before your session to help. So, Chapter 3 synopsis. Belcora's sprawling library has been transformed from a store of necromantic knowledge into a stronghold for a cult of ghouls. The heroes can not only eliminate this vile cult, but also uncover significant information about Belcora's interests, and plans. That's a pretty good way to sum it up. And talking about environmental cues, what kind of descriptions should you be keeping in mind to set the tone? Books in untidy stacks, dust, looming shelves, musty mold, ruined tools and furniture, sounds of flipping pages, the stink of something rotting in a hidden corner, stuffy air. These are good ways to set that tone and keep your PCs at unease as they kind of go through this level. Okay. There we go. As always, good job. The authors do a good job about setting the tone and the pace. So the first thing I wanted to do was show you the general layout of the level. It's kind of hard to have these handy when you're going from the book, so it's good to take just a big look here. So, first point of reference that I always look to on these maps, the Gauntlight itself. So this round room is the Gauntlight sort of tower. If you were to go straight up from the center of this room, you would come out in the lighthouse on the surface. From there, we have like lots of traditional dungeon. There are hallways, big rooms, staircases up and down. You have like outside of like the main dungeon, right, which was the library, there are some secret passages on the south end that lead to this sort of natural features, which include tunnels and caverns and like water. But otherwise, this is a fairly traditional dungeon in the sense that everything is doors and right angles. As well, if you read the description for like, room C33, or sorry, C11, everything is very well organized and labeled. So if your PCs can read Undercommon as they come through here, then they can like know what room they're going into before they even go into it. So a little bonus for knowing that language. Okay. If your PCs are coming in, I would say, right, a default way they might come down here would be to follow Otari's ghost. Right? So if they follow Otari's ghost, then Otari came in through this way, circled back around into this room, and then flitted up across this room, across this library, into the restricted section, through the east door and down. So that's Otari's ghost path. So if they're following that light down here, they're going to come in from this staircase into this main chamber. If your PCs are coming in through Vollic's library, like my group did, they're going to come in from this northern staircase, but it leads to the same hallway, this sort of twin stairwells. So this becomes sort of a catch-all for those ways down here. If you go this staircase on the far west, this is a second sort of entry point that also comes from Vollic's lair, but instead of coming through his secret door in his workshop, if you come down from the room with the worm, then they're going to come in here. But you can see a lot of this module that's designed to draw your PCs to this specific area, which means we have a sort of good point to put our focus, knowing that in most ways your PCs are going to come right to here, right into this sort of first fight with the Mist Stalker, and then secondly into the main library where the Cult of the Canker, and we'll get to them. So Eni asks, have I checked out the Abomination Vaults map module? If that's the one, the Nerdarchy ones, I really like. I do like the way they look, and I think they look pretty cool. But my personal preference is for the official maps. I don't know why. I tend to try to stick with the official stuff as much as I can. And looking at them, I mean, they look really cool, but I haven't really had that desire to make the jump. So that is a good thing to be aware of, is there is somebody out there that's redoing all these maps in a different style. And so you can check those out, and it might fit the style of your game a little more. It's a little more realistic looking, I guess. A little more colorful. But no, I've seen them. I have not made the jump over to using them. Okay, there's one more way down into this way, which oddly enough, even though the other ways are the majority, there's 3 different ways down. This other way is probably the easiest way down, and also probably what the book assumes is the first way down. And that is this stairwell to the south. And this stairwell is the one that comes just from where Fresnokesh's lair is, right on the edge of the Morlock's territory. So in that sort of vein, if they come down here, they enter into this visitor's reading room and meet Agriel, the Morlock ghoul, which I'll cover a little bit later. But even if they come this way, it's important to know that if you, it's going to dump them ultimately into the exact same place, right? Everything dumps into this entry into the main library, and there's no way to enter the main library any other way, which is important because we really need to introduce this Cult of the Canker in a very incremental way, because there are no pushovers, first of all. Second of all, the PCs will learn the abilities of the ghouls as they go. And then if we want to look at like the next important thing on layout is like ways down. There is one way down on the far east through the restricted section, and that leads down to I believe it's Jaw the werewolf that is on the 4th level, and this is the way Atari went. So if they're following Atari's ghost, this is a good way to. This is kind of the way they'll go. And the other way down is through this natural caverns. There's a gibbering mouther down here that lives. You can actually, right above this water, there is a well that leads to the prisoner's room on the 2nd level where the Morlocks keep people. Highly unlikely your PCs will want to go up and down that way, but if they do, they could come straight down into this room. This little windy tunnel here, this also leads to the 4th level, kind of squeezed into this tight corridor, and that takes them real close to where Otari's body would end up, which is, something we really want to funnel them to Otari's body because it's a huge plot point in the first book. And lastly, there's this last tunnel here, which I'll cover a little bit later. This tunnel leads from the Abomination Vaults back to Otari. It actually comes up underneath the town. They're completely hidden. Your PCs may never find it, but it's a good way to keep in mind. They may or may not have a way in or out of the dungeon that way. Okay. The primary faction, which I'm going to cover first, is the Cult of the Canker. The cult controls basically everything on this level. So anything in the center from this lighthouse up through the library, up through the restricted section, up through this temple, down in all these scriptoriums, and even down here in this ritual chamber, all Cult of the Canker. There are a few they're not factions, they're just individual monsters, like a Miststalker, a Lurker in the Light, Gibber, Mouther, Wood Golem, stuff like that haunt, as well as some ghosts that kind of claim territory, but are not particularly a threat or a faction. So this level is very easy to keep in mind who controls what and where. Okay, so talked a lot. Eni's saying they like how open-ended these dungeons are designed. I agree. I do like how there is not just a singular path through there, and every group that plays this is probably going to take a slightly different path, but it all leads to a fun experience, and they did a really good job at designing this and planning that out, I gotta say. I'm a big fan of how the dungeon layouts are, for sure. All right, the main source of tonight's topic because I started writing about this cult and I kept writing for a long time. This is the cult of the Canker. So the cult of the Canker, what the hell is it, right? Because your PCs are probably going to wonder too. It's the dominant faction on the library. Your players are 100% going to come in contact with them. It's designed that way. They're going to come face to face. There's no talking it out. There's no, like with the Morlocks, maybe you can kind of diplomacy your way through. These are like undead that want nothing more than to rip the flesh from your heroes and add them to the Canker. So your PCs better be ready for a fight. Get familiar with the stat blocks. There's two major stat blocks. The Ghoul and the Canker Cultist. I'll dive deep into the different stat blocks and highlight those abilities in a bit. But if you memorize the Ghoul and then the Canker Cultist, then everything else will be pretty easy because it's just a little bit layered on top of that. So let's talk about the backstory of the cult of the Canker. Right? What were they hundreds of years ago? Because these people were servants and librarians that go back to Belcora's time 500 years ago. Originally, the cult was a collection of librarians, caretakers, and scribes. They maintained her library level and her collection, all of the research that she needed to complete the Gauntlight, all the necromancy that she wanted to know. These are the people that were in charge of that when they were alive. So these people, these ghouls, they're not mindless like undead. They're not, right? They're not, oh, I want to eat you. I want to like suck your blood. Vampires, they're not mindless zombies. They're not even just like dumb riffraff. They are scholars. They should be smart. They should have a high vocabulary. They should be eloquent. And they should probably be a little crazy. Because what happened is after Belcora died, they put all of their focus, all of their energy, all of their brain power into one thing. How can they bring Belcora back to life? And that led their obsession into necromantic rituals and the art of necromancy. And eventually, their food stores began to run low. So they had two choices. Well, yeah, I mean, they probably had more choices, but let's just say they had two choices. One, they could go to the surface to try to get more food, possibly alerting the Rose Guard or any other heroes to their presence, which could possibly lead to their failure of their goal. They did not like this option. Option two turned out to be a more popular one amongst the crazed cult, which was cannibalism. There were plenty of servants on the second level who also were using some of their food. So if they just started eating the servants and started taking these other people and eating their flesh, it solved it's like two birds with one stone. Less people eating your food, more food to go around. So that's what they did. Well, at least most of them. There were a couple of holdouts, which we'll cover in a little bit later. But yeah, so what happened? Over a little bit of time, the Ghoul Fever started spreading amongst their ranks. By feasting on the flesh of the living, it corrupted them in terrible ways and turned them all into ghouls. And that didn't take long to spread through this sort of cult of Belcora. The interesting thing, they were so focused and so hyper-focused on what they were trying to do, they barely even noticed the change. So these people don't really have like a conscious choice in their head that one day they were good, one day they're evil. It was a slippery slope slide into the crazed ghoul sort of fanaticism. Now they live on, fully ghouls, continuing their singular focus as a group, bring Belcora back to life. Keep that in mind as you kind of roleplay these for your PCs. So, what are they doing today? What's their motivations? What's their goals? What's their tactics? Well, as I said in the backstory, their motivation very clearly resurrect Belcora. Their leader, it's Nakazurin. It's kind of a mouthful. Nakazurin. She lives up here. Let's see. Let me see if I have a full art of her to show. There we go. This blue ghoul necromantic staff holding lady Nakazurin. She was one of Belcora's primary necromantic advisors in life. And with all of her knowledge and all of her fanaticism, she came up with a very easy to pitch plan to everyone. We need to build an effigy. We need to build a body for Belcora to come back into because her body's gone. So she started building a 15-foot tall statue of Belcora, an effigy, a statue, a voodoo doll, whatever you want to call it. It's a statue. It looks like Belcora. It's 15 feet tall. Her plan is very simple. If you get enough flesh and stitch it over the body, over the statue, piece by piece, adding bits, you can create a suitable housing for Belcora's soul to re-inhabit and give her an anchor point into this world, and Belcora will return and lead them once again. And this is specifically what the cankerous, this sort of thing is the canker, right? It's this cankerous flesh that they're drying out, it's rotting, they're sewing it together bit by bit. This is the what they're referred to when they talk about the canker, the cult of the canker. This 15-foot object, this 15-foot effigy reincarnation, new body for Belcora, is the canker. So when they're talking about the PCs, like, I want to add, we need you for the canker, or do you have a donation for the canker? They want their flesh to use here. Kind of creepy when the PCs will finally get that reveal, I think. So it's kind of stitched together with all kinds of random flesh, right? There's ghoul flesh, there's adventurer flesh, there's Morlock flesh, there's random monster flesh. Basically anywhere they can get flesh, they add it to it. The big kind of irony here is not only do they need the flesh for the statue, they need the flesh to eat because they're ghouls. They eat flesh. So it's this horrible duality of, like, I need the flesh for the canker, but I need the flesh to survive. And it really hinders them from actually completing their task, right? Because they're ghouls. So there's some delicious irony in there that you can lean into if you want. So when it comes to your heroes, what they would prefer is not to necessarily capture or kill your heroes, right? Ultimately, they would prefer to convert them into ghouls to join their cult. They want to, like, infect them with the Ghoul Fever, lock them away until they transform, and then they got more cultists to bolster their ranks. A close second, though, they will definitely take the flesh to add to the canker. But what this means is that if your party TPKs on this level for any reason, and it's definitely possible because there are some tough fights, if your PCs run from one fight, they might stumble into another room and make that fight really dangerous. You do have a chance here to kind of dial it back and make them captured and not dead, and they all wake up with this horrible disease. Then you got a jailbreak scenario. So keep that in your back pocket, in your mind, in case you need a get out of jail free card for your heroes. The room that they would probably end up in that case, the book tells you to put them down here in C38, the author's hall. So this room they can get locked into and basically transform with all their gear taken away, which, interestingly enough, has a secret passage out the back. So if the PCs wake up in this room, they can escape if they find the secret door. The secret door leads to this gibbering mouther, but if the PCs run, they could run all the way back to Atari and kind of recover. So that is a good way out, right? I'm pretty sure that's why they asked you to use this room. It just gives the PCs a way out that the cult doesn't even know about. Kind of cool. Okay. So since your PCs are going to be fighting ghouls a lot, let's take a look at their stat blocks. So the basic ghoul stat block. Okay. Standard TTRPG ghoul abilities. If you've played ghouls in D&D or Pathfinder before, they kind of have these two stock abilities. One seems to be well, actually, it kind of surprised me because in D&D it's like a stink effect, but here it's like a paralysis on hit and a ghoul disease, right? So they have a jaw strike and a claw strike. The jaw strike is just a plus. It's a higher damage because it does 1d6. but the Claw Strike has Agile on it. So if you're doing a sort of multi-attack penalty, you probably want to lean into the Agile for the follow-up attacks to have a better chance of hitting. Worth noting, though, on the Jaw attack, it has a chance to inflict Ghoul Fever, which can convert them to a ghoul. But on a Claw attack, that does not apply. So the Ghoul Fever only applies to bites, but both have this Paralysis ability. They're only level 1 creatures, so if you look creature 1, when your PCs first encounter these, they will tear them down pretty quick because your PCs are probably level 3 by the time they're here. These enemies are level 1, so each individual ghoul is not a huge threat, but they're going to be fighting more of them at a time, which kind of bumps up that difficulty a bit. But it'll feel good for your PCs to really land a crit and just kill one of these in kind of one hit usually. Because of the 2 effects they have, specifically Paralysis, all it takes is one bad roll to kind of push that first domino over, and the fight can snowball out of control. So you better hope your PCs have good fortitudes, okay? So let's take a look at these 2 first. Firstly, the Paralysis effect. So anytime they hit, your PCs are going to be making a fortitude save. Any living non-elf creature hit by the ghoul's attack has to do a DC 15 fortitude saving throw or become paralyzed. Okay, well, first of all, any elves, congratulations, you're immune to this effect. I don't know the lore behind this, but it does seem to go back a ways that elves can never be affected by the ghoul's paralysis. I don't know why that is or why it started, but it's lived on to this day, so congratulations, elf PCs. But what does it mean to be paralyzed, right? Coming from 5e mostly, I was really scared of this ability because paralysis in 5e is bad news. You can't do anything. Everything has advantage against you. Everything crits against you automatically. It's really rough. But in Pathfinder, paralyzed is actually a little more tame. Still a big deal, just not as like earth-shattering end, right? If you're paralyzed, you become flat-footed, and the only action you can take are mental abilities like Seeking. Maybe you can come up with a creative mental ability that you're not used to, but like it requires GM sort of like allowance here. So pretty much you're just going to be doing recall knowledge checks, and because you're flat-footed, your enemies are going to have a +2 against your AC, or +2 to hit, or your AC is going to be lower against their attack as well. That triggers sneak attack, precision damage, all kinds of bad news. So all that being said, losing your turn is the biggest deterrent here. Eni is saying elves are alien in Galarian, so I like to think it's due to their alien physiology. Ooh, that's kind of interesting. That's true. I haven't looked at the bigger mythology of the world, but like even though we're playing Pathfinder and not Starfinder, there is still a solar system around. So that would make sense that maybe the elves just aren't affected because they have a entirely different body like physiology. I'll buy that. That's my headcanon until I hear otherwise now. Okay. So the second thing is another fortitude save whenever they get bit, right? That is Ghoul Fever. Ghoul Fever is a disease that goes onto the PCs. It has no immediate effect, but it has dangerous long-term ramifications that may kind of hamstring your party into slowing down as they adventure through, right? So in Pathfinder, I want to take a minute here just to review what disease mechanics are, because I had to look them up. They're not necessarily easy, but once you understand the broad strokes, it'll make more sense. So I'm going to highlight this, highlight what a disease actually is, right? So let me come back here to this browser view and go to the best website if you're playing Pathfinder, Archives of Nethys, which has all of the rules up there for you to sort of, take a look at. So, in Pathfinder, an affliction, which a disease is this type of affliction, the stat block will have a DC, an onset time, a maximum duration, and the effects at each level, right? At the end of each stage, however long it is, the PC has to make a save against the same DC that inflicted them in the first place. If they get a failure, the stage of that disease moves up one more. Like, for instance, from stage 1 to stage 2. If you get a success, it moves it from one stage lower. So it goes from stage 2 down to stage 1. And if you get a crit failure, it goes 2 up from 1 to 3. And a crit success takes it 2 steps down from 3 to 1. Okay, if you ever drop below step 1 of the disease, it's gone. So for instance, if you succeed at level 1, it's gone. If you crit succeed at level 2, it also goes away. So Eni's saying it's good to note that Paralysis has the incapacitation trait, so the PCs will be treating whatever they roll against the Paralysis as one step better, unless the ghoul is their level or higher. See, that's something I didn't even know about. I didn't remember there being. It does have the incapacitation trait. You're right. I didn't even know that was a thing to even be aware of. I'll have to look at the actual rules for that later, because that sounds like something important that I'm missing in my interpretation of these rules. So that's good. Homework for me to look into. Okay, so let's go back here to the game. For Ghoul Fever, you can see there's actually 6 stages for it. And for standard ghouls, the DC for all of these is 15. At stage 1, if you get inflicted with the disease, you're just a carrier, you suffer no ill effects. PCs might even forget they failed this fortitude saving throw. At the end of the first day, they make a saving throw against this disease. If they fail and they go to stage 2, now they take 2d6 damage from the effects as the disease ravages their body. And anytime they get healing, they get half as many hit points as they normally would. This is due to their physiology sort of changing into undead, I believe, and undead can't get healing from healing spells. Stage 3 is the same as stage 2. But stage 4 is when it goes to one step closer to being worse, right? You take another 2d6 damage, but now you get 0 healing at all from healing spell effects whatsoever. That carries on also through stage 5. So in order for a PC to die, right, it would take at least 6 days of straight failures or, a lot of crit failures. Stage 6, the end of this disease, is death. Your PC just straight dies and rises as a ghoul the next midnight. So this ghoul disease left untreated, Ghoul Fever left untreated, can wipe out of an adventuring party. Most likely it's not going to, right? That's a lot of failures from the low level disease. DC 15 fortitude saves are not too bad. However, if you look at some of the higher ghouls in this level, the DCs go up quite a bit, and those ones could spell bad news. Okay, if your party ever gets this disease, there is a downtime activity called Treat Disease that takes 8 hours of a PC's time to focus all their attention into helping to treat the disease. You get a single medicine check against the DC of the disease, again 15 for the standard. If you get a success, it gives a +2 roll against the disease. It doesn't even cure the disease. It just gives them a +2 on their fortitude roll. If they get a crit success, then you're talking a +4 against the roll. And if you get a critical fail, you actually penalize the roll by 2. So you can actually hurt someone by treating them more than you can hinder them. Also note it takes 8 hours of dedicated treating per patient, so you can't have one person treating more than one during the 8-hour period. And this is a circumstance bonus, by the way. Okay. The other way to get rid of this disease is a spell called Remove Disease. It's a divine primal spell, so anyone with a divine or primal spellist has access to it. It is a level 3 spell. Remember, your PCs are probably level 4 here, so that means they probably don't have access to this spell when they're here. They probably get it down the road a little bit. But there are 2 places back in town that they can get this sort of treatment if they need. One is Vandy Bandersnatch at the Dawnflower Library. She's the cleric of Sarenrae. The book specifically calls out that she always has it prepared and ready to go. The other one is Whirlywin at the Stonering Pond, the halfling female at the Stonering Pond. In my game, I would allow them to have it as well. If you have a person that doesn't want to go to the divine church route, they want to go the nature route, let them. So the price for this, the book calls out standard pricing for things like this. And that is going to be base price for an 18 is 18 gold for a 3rd level spell. It does say if you're doing a spell that has a casting time of 1 minute or more, and this is a 10-minute spell, to bump it up by about 25%. So you should be ready to charge your PCs about 22 to 23 gold per casting of the spell. And all the spell does is allows the person that's doing the treating to counteract the disease. So they make a counteract roll against the DC of the disease. So it's not like in D&D where you touch someone and your disease is gone. It's just you touch it and then you get an instant roll to like fight the disease. And if you roll low, well, you're out of the gold and you don't actually get anywhere. So that's kind of the broad strokes, reading Rainbow, the more you know of how diseases and afflictions work. You're going to want to know because your PCs are going to be making 1 to 2 fortitude saving throws every time they get hit on this level. So pocket that knowledge. Okay, switching back to stat blocks in general, let's bump up from the Ghoul to look at the Canker Cultist. The Canker Cultist is sort of a bigger, buffer, deadlier version of the Ghoul. So, much like the Ghouls, the same attacks. You have the Jaw Strike and the Claw Strike. Oh, one last thing. All the Ghouls share 2 more abilities, which may or may not come in. One is the Swift Leap, which is a 1-action move. The Ghoul can jump up to half its speed without triggering reactions. So if you have, for instance, a PC with like a fighter that has a reaction, the Ghouls can like leap out of range without triggering opportunity attacks, and kind of be like almost like Zerglings in StarCraft, where they're like hit and run annoyances. Okay, and secondly, consume flesh. If there's a dead body near one of these things, then the creature can reach down and eat it and just like devour it and heal 1d6 hit points as it just completely like eviscerates this, right? Your friend goes down, they die, and the next thing you know, the ghouls are eating the dead body of your friend. It's a good way to kind of really scare the hell out of your players if it comes down to that. So the Canker Cultists have those same abilities: consume flesh, swift leap, jaws, claw, ghoul fever. Everything's the same. The only difference is the damage is a little higher. So the D8 for the jaw and a D4 for the claw. So the jaw's a little stronger. The strike's a little higher. Their hit points go up. They go up to 19 AC, 45 hit points. They're beefier. They're just stronger. They have the same thing with consume flesh, which is you can eat the creatures that died, but these are called out as having specifically a necklace strung with decaying lumps of flesh. So these cultists can reach down, rip off the flesh necklace that they're wearing and eat it to heal 2d6 hit points, which allows them to really have a little bit more longevity against your player. So just the idea that they carry around flesh necklaces and eat it is kind of creepy. As well, on top of all of that, they also have spells. Now, their spell list is not very, it's kind of underwhelming in my experience. They don't do a ton of damage, but they are good at like kind of staying in the back and harassing while the minions kind of do all the combat, right? So Grim Tendrils is pretty cool. That like lashes out, creates a let me see, it's a 30-foot line straight out of you, and it goes through all living. It can go through the dead creatures without affecting anything, but if it goes through your living heroes in a line, they're all going to get hit by it, and that will like cut them and make them persistently bleed. Command, of course, can be good. Ray of Enfeeblement can be good if you have like a strong fighter type. Just sapping that strength for a fight is really going to make them feel like feel the effects, right? -2 on everything they do. They're probably not critting. They're probably gonna have a hard time against the fight. The downside being it's a 42 saving throw again, and 42 saving throws, are pretty easy for fighters. Let's see. Phantom Pain is one that I had good use with, right? It's a will save. You target their mind, and it deals persistent mental damage, like initial mental damage and persistent mental damage. So what I would do is, if you use this spell, is you need to like flavor the phantom pain, the mental damage, as skin being flayed, right? This is a cult that wants to flay your skin and add it to the canker. So that should be the imagery that you feel. They look down, they see their flesh being stripped from their arms by the spell. They think they're being flayed alive. They're taking mental damage the whole time until the spell goes away by, retching to get rid of the sickened condition. And the last spell to be aware of is Harm. Harm's a classic, right? 1 action, 2 action, 3 action. It can be used lots of different ways. The important thing to note, of course, Harm, the AoE burst 3 action Harm can hurt all of your enemies with negative damage and heal all of your allies with the same damage, because your allies are undead. They have negative healing. So you can hurt and heal in one big AoE pulse, which is very powerful. I do want to call out here, if you're following the adventure, right, there is a chance that your PC's got the Channel Protection Amulet from the Nimbeloth Shrine up in the first level. If they are wearing that thing and they've invested into it, they have resistance 5 to the harm spell. So this is a good way to highlight that, right? Describe the negative energy flooding through everyone, and then talk about how the amulet glows or puts some kind of protection and acts as like a focus point and absorbs all that negative damage away from your heroes. It'll call out that exploration that they did to get these little treasures and search every nook and cranny are paying off. So if your PCs have this sort of thing on them, target them with it, because they'll feel awesome when it like protects them. At least that's the theory anyway. Yeah, their claws do a little bit more damage, but otherwise they're basically the same. And these are creatures. These are actually level 3 creatures. So they bump up 2 difficulty ratings from the basic ones. Okay. Going up from that, we have the leader, Nakazurin. Right? She has 21 AC, 75 hit points, and she has she's a creature level 5. She is like the boss of this level, right? She's not the boss of the whole like first arc, right? That's Vollic, but Nakazurin is the boss of the library. So she should be an imposing, scary figure. You can use Borbo to highlight how evil she was or how mean she was. You can have the cultists constantly talking about their mistress or taking them to their high priestess, just to put the fear of this imposing figure into your PC's mind, right? She has in the stat block, she has something called Consume Masterpiece. This masterpiece is the Canker. It's the 15-foot statue. She refers to it as her masterpiece, and that's kind of canon. So really lay in like she should like revel in the creation of this thing. It should be her life's work, right? She is so sure that what she is doing to provide a body for Belcora, it's her destiny, it's her calling, it's what Belcora wants. Honestly, Belcora probably couldn't care less. I don't think Belcora ever really cares about these people, right? They're too beneath her. But they don't know that. Because she was the head of the research wing when she was alive, she should be super smart, or, wicked smart. She should have a good vocabulary. She should make logical, well-reasoned arguments against your PCs. But she should be completely insane on top of that. It's going to be a tough NPC to really embody properly, but the payoff should be good when they have the final showdown. For fights, same as all the other ghouls, right? Jaws, claws, swift leap, Ghoul Fever, paralysis, consume flesh. She does add a staff, right? Her attacks go up quite a bit. She's got plus 14 to hit. She's dealing twice as much damage. It's 2d8 instead of 1d8. Her claws, agile, same thing. Her DC for her paralysis. Oh, I didn't highlight that for the Canker. I think the Cankers were 20. So if you look at the Canker Cultist, right? The Ghoul Fever is 20, and the Paralysis is DC 20. So 15 for a regular Ghoul, 20 for the Canker Cultist. That's a huge goal for 5. And Nakazurin takes it higher to 22 DC. If your PCs get inflicted with this from the disease or the paralysis, it's probably really bad news for them. So keep in mind, you can pretty much shut PCs down with that save, that like paralysis, which is pretty crazy. One thing I noticed looking at her stat block, right? She has the shield cantrip because she's got spells. She's got different spell lists. She has the shield cantrip. So for one action, she can put up a shield, which gives her +1 AC. Because her cantrips are 3rd level, the shield has a hardness of 10. So she has 10 damage absorption, and then once you use that, the shield breaks. You can't use it for the rest of the fight. So what you can do is kind of make it like a phase boss fight in a way. During the first phase, she has the shield up. She's using one action every turn to keep it up, and she's using it to make it harder to hit her, right? At some point, she's going to need to use that to absorb a blow and take the 10 damage so it doesn't go to her. And once that shatter effect happens and the shield goes away, it should feel almost like a phase shift in a boss fight. That's how I'm hoping to do it. We'll see how the action economy works out. But yeah, it's like, unlike most NPCs, she has like a 3rd action she can use that's really impactful, which is shield. Let's see. Silence is a spell on her list, which when I saw, I got very excited and very happy to use against my bard. And then if you actually look closer, silence can only target willing creatures. Because of that, silence is not going to be very good in this effect for shutting down the loud vocal bards in your party. But there is another option, which is Sound Burst. So Sound Burst does, within 30 feet, a 10-foot cone. 10-foot burst. And if they fail their save, they become deafened. Deafened people can't benefit from anything with the auditory trait. And if they try anything to do anything that has like an auditory trait, they have to make a DC 5 flat check. So if you can hit a sound burst on the bard and like some whip about like shutting your mouth or like, silence in the presence of the canker, you're gonna like really put a wrench in their plans, right? Suddenly Inspire Courage isn't going off. They got to make flat checks just to talk. The DC, they can't communicate. It can really muck up the party's composition. And since I have a bard in my party, I was really excited to use this. So Sound Burst. It also does 2d10 sonic damage against everyone in the burst. That's not bad. Vampiric Touch is another big one, right? We talked about this on the first level when we were looking at Mr. Beak. However, we're now dealing with 3rd level PCs and not 1st level PCs, so Vampiric Touch is not as deadly. It still packs quite a bunch. What is it? I think it's like a couple d6 negative damage. What is it? 66 negative damage. And being able to heal. So again, good way to finish off a PC, but it's not the TPK inducing attack roll it was on the beginning of the adventure. It also has +14 to hit, so that's really good. Chilling Darkness is a good way to harass parties lacking in dark vision. My party has 1 person with dark vision, 1 person with regular vision, and 2 people with low light vision. And they use the sort of light cantrip to sort of make their way around. They have dancing lights, they have light cantrip, they have these ever burning torches they just got. A lot of like cool effects, right? Chilling Darkness, not only does it do 5d6 cold damage on hit. I doubt your party's a celestial, but if they are, an extra 5d6 evil damage. It does that damage, but as it cuts through magical abilities, or if they have like light cantrip on them, you can attempt to counteract that light. That means if the light cantrip's up, you hit them, it passes through the light cantrip, it counteracts it, the light cantrip is gone. The light is gone, right? Your PCs are enveloped in darkness, they're scrambling to cast light, they're scrambling to get the spell back up. And if they can't see, Nakazurin becomes much scarier, right? So because this is a 3rd level spell, and like light, dancing lights, the ever burning torches, they're all low level. It's even on like a fail on the counteract roll, it still shuts it down. The only way you can fail is by crit failing the roll. So more than likely you have the ability to plunge the battlefield into darkness, which is a good fear-inducing thing to use on your players. And on top of all of this that she has, don't forget she holds a Staff of Necromancy. So this gives you a lot of the spells that the other cultists already had, right? Chill Touch, Grim Tendrils, Raven Enfeeblement, including Deafness directly. So if you want to shut down the Bard again, and Sonic Boom doesn't do it, Sonic Burst doesn't do it, go ahead and just deafen the Bard, and watch him struggle. And her main strategy in this battlefield, it's a pretty big battlefield, right? Her main strategy is to fight near this big statue of Belcora, because her Consume Masterpiece ability allows her to rip flesh from her statue, eat it, and as she does, she not only recovers 3d6 hit points, she gets quickened 1 for that turn, which she can use that action to cast a spell or to attack. So eating off the statue once is just free. She just consumes it, and she makes up for the action she spent to do an aggressive action. So there's no reason to not use this at least once during your fight. Whew. All right. So that is Nakazurin. That is the cult, right? There's these cultists here in the library. Man, that's a lot to cover when we're talking about the cults. I mean, we've been talking for almost an hour already. That didn't even cover everything, right? I didn't cover what is it, Aller Rosk. He's like a tattoo a tattoo ghoul who tattoos the flesh, and he may or may not eat his own tattoos. He might not ever get to complete his masterpiece. Who knows? There's the blue light of the Gauntlight, right? There's this room that generates the light. When the ghouls end their turn in the light, they heal 66, I believe it is. Let me just double check. They heal 4d6. So the ghouls willingly put themselves in the light. They heal up, and they can keep fighting. So anytime your ghouls are on the verge of potentially dying, they can always make a break for this light. Small tip here, I didn't cover it earlier. There's nothing that blocks this library from the Gauntlight. So if a fight breaks out here, there's no reason these things would not just look down the hallway and be like, what's going on, right? That is bad, because you do not want to combine these two fights. So what I did, and what I suggest you do, is to put a curtain or draw some kind of thing that blocks vision across. I put a curtain. Allow this first fight to play out, and then in the aftermath, have these people come because there's going to be loud noises, I assume, unless they're super stealthy. Have them kind of peek their head out to say, hey, what's going on? Lock eyes with your PC and use that to put the pressure on. Because remember, this is a live dungeon. These things can hear what's going on. The PCs shouldn't be able to just come in, murder something, and rest instantly, as much as they want, right? There should be consequences for lingering. And a good way to do that is to have enemies nearby, especially if your PCs are being loud, to come check it out. So definitely do the curtain here. You can see I've added the curtain. I've added these walls. So if I'm going to I will grab a new Lars token real quick. If you look at it from a PC's point of view, they look down, they see the curtain, they can't see past it. But this wall, since it's an ethereal wall, they can walk through it. It's just a curtain, right? And then if they poke their head through, they can see what's going on. Okay. Yeah. There's the violet fungi down here. There's all kinds of fun stuff. We don't even have a chance to cover every little thing, but you have now the broad strokes of the Cult of the Canker, and you're probably ready to handle any curveball your party throws at you, dealing with them in here. Okay. So, besides the Cult of the Canker, what else is going on this level? Well, there's a couple of other NPCs. I just wanted to give you a quick overview of them in rapid fire fashion. Number 1, Chandrayu Invasar. So Chandrayu Invasar is the aforementioned book lady that Vollic had a relationship with. She actually never became a ghoul like the rest, because she was killed by her subordinates because she was so mean to them. So they just decided, you know what? We're going to murder you. We don't want to live under you anymore. So they turned on her after Bakor died and murdered her. And her body has lain here ever since. Her body, which is in this room, in the scriptorium, is clutching the photo of Vollic that they need to threaten to really mess with him in the fight, to knock him off his game, right? It becomes slowed 1. He loses an action if they threaten the picture. So if they can find it and use it, and they've unlocked that thread of logic by helping Borbo, it could have payoffs down the road. So this is where that lady body ends up being. Even though her body is dead, her soul is bound to this room, and it carries on living as if nothing had ever changed. So the way the scene plays out is they stumble into the room, and then they see her ghost. Now, what I'm doing is I'm having her ghost start in this other room, and as they stumble in and kind of walk into the room, I'm going to have her kind of come out and sort of like surprise them. I think it's more dynamic that way because otherwise they can just turn and run. And I want this to play out. I want it to be a fun, impactful scene, right? So her ghost doesn't realize that she's dead. And if the PCs call that to her attention in any fashion, she goes into a murderous rage and attacks them. But what happens is when they step in, she mistakes them for being some of her scribes. She chastises them for being tardy, and she sets them to their task of translating the books that need to be translated. Make it clear that this order that she's giving them is dripping with like veiled threats. Like she's not even like, the way she says it is just assuming you're going to listen because she's the boss, and there's no way for you to turn her down, right? Let them feel the threat behind the words without it actually being overtly threatening. If they do the work or pretend to do the work, then she can be talked with, and they can actually interact with her and maybe find out bits of information about the backstory, about what was going on with her and Vollic and Belcora, and maybe get some of these answers they're looking for. They even if they just mime doing the work, she comes over, she looks over their shoulder, have her like pressing against them, have her like telling them what a bad job they're doing. You know, she's pretty evil, horrible woman by all standards. But allow them to interact with her and answer questions. Eventually, every like 10 minutes or so, she drifts out of the room here through this into the secret door. And as she does so, she kind of mimes the opening of the door and pushes through. So any PC perceptive and watching is going to be able to pick up on the fact that there is a secret door. But in this moment that she's gone, she's only gone from 1 to 4 rounds. So your PCs can sort of try to act quickly, rush down here, get everything off of her body, and get out. And the question is, how much time do they spend trying to, right? This scene could just be a purely roleplay scene. This scene could be a purely combat scene. It really is up to you and your players how it plays out. I will note that 2 things. One, she has rejuvenation because she is a ghost. So unless they are able to break her sort of fascination, her pining, I called it obsession. Unless they can break her obsession with Vollic and show that, you know, he's not worth pining over. Even if they defeat her, she's just going to respawn the next day and do the same thing and live the same life. In order to put her soul to rest, they have to mentally convince her to break up with Vollic, or like that he's not good enough for her. It's a DC 21 diplomacy check to make that happen. And if they make that happen, she actually is going to be like slowed 1 and lose one of her actions for 10 rounds, so like a minute and a half. If the PCs can defeat her while she's slowed, that puts her body to rest. She has resistance to all damage except for Force, Ghost, and Positive. Ghost, Touch, and Positive. 64 hit points, 23 AC, 6 level creature. I'm sorry to say, I don't think your level 3 PCs are going to defeat her in a straight up fight at this point without the Vollic route. However, do note, she is sightbound, which means she can only exist in this room, 36 and 37. So if the PCs run, she cannot chase them. She can chase them to the door, and then she can go back to her work. So it's kind of like an optional side boss, and if they want that picture off the body, they're probably going to need to either distract and or just grab and run. But it's a very fun sort of PC, and it plays into the Vollic subplot, which may or may not be a huge part of your story like it is with ours. All right, Agriel. Very interesting little character. May or may not be the first person that they see as they come down to the story, this level, because it is kind of presumably the first room of this dungeon if they take the correct way. Agriel is a Morlock, like those they have already met above on the second level. But he got turned into a ghoul through Ghoul Fever as the Morlock kind of came through this thing and got into a scuffle with the ghouls. So now he's both Morlock and Ghoul. The Morlocks above shun him because he's no longer living. He's not allowed in another society because of that fact. The ghouls on this level reject him because he's not smart enough, he's not malicious enough, he just doesn't fit in with this culture of this level. What is his? I think he's chaotic neutral. Okay. And what do they say the ghouls are? The ghouls are chaotic evil. Yeah, so he's not quite evil enough for them. Thus, he's stuck in a sort of limbo here, right? He is calm, he's collected, he reacts to the heroes cautiously but cordially. He doesn't jump, he'll defend himself, absolutely, but he has no need to like be aggressive, right? He just wants to be left alone, reading his books in this visitor's reading room and just be, like he's creature 3. Just wants to be left alone. Now, if the PCs try to make friends with them, which is possible, and automatically happens if they can prove they defeated Gralgust, the leader of the Morlocks up above. If there's proof of that, Agriel will definitely be their allies and agree to help them on this level. He will tag along with them. The fun thing is, if he tags along, he has a sort of a special dietary restriction. You see, he's a ghoul, and ghouls need to eat flesh, but he's not content with eating the flesh of things that were merely once. He doesn't really care about eating stuff that's alive. He doesn't even really care about eating stuff that's no longer alive and dead. His particular culinary feasting delight is the flesh of the undead. He wants that flesh to die, be reborn, and then he wants to consume it. It's the only thing that makes him happy. Luckily, he happens to live on a level with tons of undead. He's just not strong enough to do it himself, right? So, if he tags along with the PCs and the PCs kill the ghoul, he can devour the flesh. So if you look at his consume flesh action, he can only do it if there's a corpse of an undead creature that was destroyed within the last hour. So in that case, he can eat the undead, devour it, and just go in there and just glutton himself by filling his stomach with the flesh of the ghouls. And he should do this for everybody, right? After the fight's over, there's 4 dead ghouls on the ground, and the PCs are starting to like bandage up. Agriel, that's 4 bodies he needs to consume to fill his like never-ending hunger. It's a very grotesque sort of thing. You should make it be grotesque. You should make the PCs feel uneasy about their newfound ally. But other than this weird fascination with eating undead flesh, it should be a fairly neutral, jovial, helpful creature for the PCs. He kind of knows the book area a little bit. And he can be the difference between a TPK and a easy success. All right. Jarell. Jarell lives here in this little office, locked away. She was a book lady that was in charge of binding and maintaining the books. And much like Chandrayu, right? As the cultist kind of turned, she did not want that fate for herself. She did not want to become undead. She locked herself in here, closed the door, locked her key, took some arsenic that she used to bind the books, drank it, and died. Because of that, her restless spirit is tied here with the necromantic energy of Belcora's death, tying her here. She now spends her time miming the actions of like repairing books like she did in life. If the PCs happen to confront her, she's not hostile. She's concerned with them and will look at them strange, but she won't attack them unless she's attacked first. This will be the first ghost your PCs have a chance to meet that is not immediately hostile to them. That's important to show what's going on here as far as story elements go, right? Ghosts are things that have unfinished business. Not every ghost is a threat. Most of the undead they've dealt with so far have been classified as haunts, which are like ghostly traps. So those are definitely hostile. But this one, it's the first glimpse into the possibilities of using the ghosts as allies here in the adventure path. And yeah, your PCs are going to be wary of her, but steer them towards that diplomatic approach. It'll pay off in the long run. Okay. More miscellaneous encounters. Devils. Right? So we talked before on the the second level about there being devils. But here is the first real threat of a devil, and that is Corlock. Corlock is a bearded devil, also known as a Barbazoo. In a sort of strange twist of fate, even though he's stuck on his guard post here for like 500 years, he's bored. And when he sees the party, he kind of has like a bored voice, like, "Oh, yeah, you guys are under arrest. Come on, get into the jail cell. Don't make me like get angry." If they want to fight, he'll give it to them, right? He is more than up for a fight. It'll probably make him happy because he's bored. But he's not immediately hostile. They have a chance to talk, and if they do, they can actually unlock a side quest. You see, Corlock here knows Belcora is gone. He knows that his job here is pointless. He's stuck guarding a level that he knows is not even, doing anything anymore. He's just stuck. But devils have to follow their contracts, and his contract says he has to listen to Belcora's command. Belcora's last command was to stand here and guard it and don't leave until I come back. Well, then she went off and died. So now Corlock is stuck here, unable to leave his post contractually. The book calls out it's not his longest post that he's ever had to watch, but it's getting up there, right? The fact that he could spend 500 years and just have it be a blip of his life is kind of silly. So what he asks for the characters, he says, I know there's a way out of my contract, but unless I have a copy of my contract, I can't prove it. So can you find my contract for me? I know it's here somewhere. And if you do, I'll let you go. And if you return with it, I'll be friends with you or whatever, right? Technically, it's a side quest, so if they do this, they get the experience bonus. The contract itself can be found on this level. It is it's in the secret room where Chandrayu is always going, locked into a small cabinet. The key is under her body, or it can be picked. The contract that they find will state, if Belcora does not give him a command within 99 weeks and 99 days, he's free to go. And that clause is all he needs to be able to bamf out of here back to the infernal plane he came from, back to hell, and leave here, becoming less of a threat to the PCs, giving them a sort of bonus experience without a fight. A real fun thing you can do here, if you look at book 2, Hands of the Devil, right? Because devils play a big role in part 2, and these are sort of foreshadowing that. You can actually have them make a contract with this devil, because there's rules for what contracts can do and what contracts they can offer. There's rules in there for what Barbazoos can offer. So in this case, they can receive a pact of the blood taking from this devil, which will give them basically persistent bleed damage in all their weapon attack. Sounds great, right? You want to deal extra damage to your enemies? How about I make your weapons cut through your foes? There is a cost, of course, and you can check the entry, but it involves he shows up once a month to just take his pick of any weapon you own, usually your best weapon, takes it for his own, and goes back. And he'll be back every month for the rest of your life. Maybe it's worth it to your PCs, maybe not, but it's kind of a fun little thing. All right. There's plenty more on this level that I'll never even cover tonight because it's already been so long. We got a lurker in the light. We got a wood golem in the shape of Belcora. We got a gibbering mouther down here. Violet fungi. So much on this level. It's a huge level. But I want to cover, again, last thing of the night is like the important story beats that take place on this level that you have to know about. You have to know about this if you're going to GM it, okay? Firstly, Otari's Ghost. I talked about it at the beginning. Otari's Ghost is here. It can lead them from this room across the dungeon down to his body, which is, again, is very important. So really steer your PCs, make sure that they see this green light coming out from under the door, have them open it, have the ghost lead them down, get them on this scent, right? My PCs so far have not been on this scent at all, which is kind of too bad. The flesh golem being built. So Nakazurin is building this flesh golem. It's not going to be alive, right? It's not finished, so it's not really a threat in this fight. However, it's important to note later on in book 2, this flesh golem can become a threat. If your PCs do not defeat it, destroy the statue, make sure it's unable to accept necromantic energy, it will come back as a reoccurring enemy. Later on in book 6 of the dungeon, there's a Morlock head being powered on a machine that's trying to like basically animate a flesh golem. If the PC shut off the machine, that necromantic energy leaves the Morlock, but shoots out across the dungeon and looks for a new host, finds this flesh golem, reanimates it, and has it come down after them. Really awesome moment. I really want this to happen. But if your PCs for some reason destroy the statue here, that won't happen later. So just remember, this statue does play an important role in a further on part of the adventure path. Okay. But yeah, make sure that you cement this flesh statue like it should haunt them. You should describe it constantly as they're in the room. You need them to remember it, so when it comes back and the 15-foot stall statue of Belcora with like ripped, sewn on flesh half hanging off is charging them down, they know where it came from. They need to know where it came from. All right, Corlock. I just talked about Corlock. His side quest with his book is a kind of a side thing and sets up Eurevian, the contract devil, later on. He can give him some of that information to like foreshadow that coming. Books. So Morley Bent, right? We talked about making sure Morley Bent gives the characters a list of books he's looking for. Or if they haven't gotten that side quest yet, as soon as they're in the library, they can look and say, I bet that book guy back in town might like some of these books, right? The way the side quest works is they can search any of these rooms that have bulk, right? So if you look at here, for instance, the library has, certain bulk of book. Sometimes they're 3, sometimes they're 2, sometimes they're 1. If the PC spends some time searching, and remember, this isn't like a 6-second check. We're talking 10, 15-minute chunks of times in exploration. If they hit a DC 18 perception check, they find 1 bulk of book. If they hit a crit on the perception, they can find up to 2 bulk worth of book. You add that to your character sheet. For instance, New Lara, if I look at her character sheet, her inventory, she's carrying 3 bulk of Morley Bent's books back to him. Each one is worth 5 gold, so that's 15 gold for these books. Once the PCs return an accumulation of 12 bulk worth of books, then the side quest is complete. They get 30 experience for that. In addition to the experience, they can continue to return as many books as they find. He'll gladly pay 5 gold per bulk. And this is a good stream of income for your level 3 PCs. A good chunk of change. The Vollic painting side quest, not an official side quest, but again, if they've learned from Borbo that he's vain, and that if they have a picture to threaten, it'll make him mad, or throw him off his game, then right here on this dead body in the room, along with a +1 chain shirt, which is really expensive, and some books that are referenced on the higher level, they can find the painting. The painting will have an attractive draw mel, which is Vollic, and they can use that to threaten Vollic down on level 4. Last but certainly not least, the hidden room. So in this temple of the Canker that Nakazurin has spent 500 years in, even she's unaware, I believe, of this room, which is the Secure Collection, which is Belcora's secret room. I'm not sure. Does she know about this or not? Let's see. It doesn't actually say as far as I know, so maybe Nakazurin knows about it, but she would never betray her queen unless forced to in some way. In here, this room, this little book, the Secure Collection, has a couple of very important things. Firstly, it has the first thing to note, right? They're probably not going to find it. In order to find this secret door, they have to be searching for it, and they have to make a DC 30 perception check to even find it. So chances are, as your players come through here the first time, they're probably not going to find it. There is a step later on the 4th level. They can find plans of the lighthouse that reveals all the secret doors. And if they reveal all the secret doors, they can find this one and come back to it because they're definitely going to want what's inside. So what's inside? Firstly, what is the treasure? So first we have a couple of important things. Scroll of Awaken portal. This is the portal. There's a portal system here in the ruins, right? This is the first chance they have to awaken those portals and reactivate so they can teleport from level to level. There is a set of loose papers that let's see, there's two things. One is loose papers that talks about Belcora's history, about how she was exiled from poverty, and about how she hates Absalom. Talks about some of the stuff below the arenas, the flesh warping. It basically gives them an insight into who Belcora is. It takes 8 hours of reading, and they have to be able to read Aklo in order to do it. But in those instances, it allows them to get some insight into what Belcora is actually planning and some of the stuff that might await them down below. Secondly, there's some besides the journal, there's the papers. The papers, if they spend 8 hours studying them, they can actually learn exactly what the Gauntlight can do. So I created, let's see, I created this alternative version that doesn't tell everything about the Gauntlight, but it does tell a lot. So they can learn about how you can activate it once a month to shine the beam and make undead come up, or teleport something from underneath outside. So this is, you know, they let them know it's an artifact. It lets them know its history. Basically, if they want to know what the Gauntlet is all about, it's hidden here in this room. So even though they might search the other areas for it, all those areas are scrubbed clean. It's only kept here under lock and key. And last, and probably most important, is this moss-covered book known as the Whispering Reeds. The Whispering Reeds, I have two versions of it. I have this one that I'm going to give to the PCs when they first get it, and I have this one, which is the full info when they finally get a hang for it. So the Whispering Reeds is an artifact. It's a book that is a collection of stories about Nimbaloth, which is Belcora's god that she worshipped. They can use this book as a source of power, right? It allows them to, like, watch. You can once per hour, you can speak a loud phrase from the book and target one incorporeal undead that takes 5d6 positive damage as they get 7 holes tearing through them. You're basically feeding these ghosts, these souls, to Nimbaloth, right? They don't know necessarily what it does. They just know it's powerful. So they might start using it. But the real thing is it's cursed, right? So every time they use this ability, it has the real thing says you have a chance to get exposed to a disease called the Empty Death. The Empty Death is basically makes you, it lays onto you, it gives you like a -2, a stupefied 2 for 24 hours, and if you die, you can become a ghost. And if you become a ghost, you can be consumed by Nimbaloth, right? Because you caught his gaze. So what I plan to do is give them the Whispering Reeds with all this information stripped out about the bad stuff, and then if they try to use it, they're gonna get the full brunt of the effects, which is kind of cool. Lore-wise, it's a collection of stories about Nimbaloth that was created originally as a cautionary tale of what not, like, how to be wary of the sort of the gods. But as it was put together, it became a sort of religious text that people seek out. And there's only a handful of copies that exist because people went mad and tried to destroy them, and the Nimbaloth like worshippers found it. So there's only a handful in existence. Belcora has one. It's probably one of her most prized possessions before she died. So this is a really key step into understanding what she's about, what Nimbaloth is about, and potentially trying to corrupt your PCs by giving them a taste of power. It is very well hidden, and like I said, it'll probably be hard for your PCs to find it, but if they do, you're in for some good times. Last closing note. On the far south, there's this tunnel, right? The dungeon has the subterranean tunnels. There's this long, windy tunnel that mentions it's a tunnel to Atari. Well, where's the tunnel lead? I said earlier it goes underneath the town. It's kind of a fun Easter egg, right? There is the product that Paizo released called the Beginner's Box, which was our first foray into Pathfinder. It takes place underneath Atari. There's a store called the Atari Fishery. Your PCs are hired because something keeps breaking into the cellar and eating stuff. You go down there, you find out it's a whole bunch of kobolds. There's a big fight culminating in a sort of dragon fight. However, I'll load it up real quick to show you. In Menace under Atari, which is the name of the module, there's a part here when you come through and you fight some Zolgaths here, and there's this sort of tunnel that goes off, and it says, oh, it just leads off somewhere deeper that's out of scope for this adventures. You feel free to populate it with whatever you want. In this case, that tunnel from the Abomination Vaults comes back into this tunnel here. And by doing that, you kind of give the PCs two things. One, a fun callback to this adventure if you've tried to play it, which is cool. They'll be like, oh, I remember this. I know where this is, right? If they've already cleared it, the stuff here should change, and you could feel free to populate it with new monsters that maybe has moved into the deserted area, right? Something's filled the void. But two, it allows them to come right back into Tamily Tendrils' Atari fishery, right? This is her business, the Atari fishery here, right on the piers. So she just got this thing replaced. She just repaired the hole. She's paid adventurers to clear it. The PCs come back, bust down the wall, spill into her basement, and she's not going to be too happy about that. But they now have an easy way back to the Gauntlet. They can go back through this tunnel and appear right on the third level of the dungeon, skipping the first two levels. And this kind of foreshadows other tunnels from like the fifth level on that the PCs will find, that shows that there might be more ways in and out of these Abomination Vaults than the PCs that anyone ever knew about, right? You don't want them to find them before it's time, but once they find it, it's like quick saves, right? Or like teleportation. It's ways for the PCs to get back into things without having to go through all the levels and all the random monsters, if you want to throw that in. It just makes them feel like cool, I guess. So that definitely comes back into place with book 2. And like I said, I try to call out anytime there's a connection to a future book that I know of. I wanted to call them out here for you guys, so you're not caught off guard later. Oh man, it's already 9:30. So it's been a very, very extra long episode. Thank you for sticking through here, and hopefully, there's a lot I thought we needed to cover, and this is a bigger of all the levels we've covered. This is definitely one of the bigger ones. So it's good that we took extra time to make sure that you are comfortable here. Let me see. Is there anything else I missed? No, I mean, I feel like there's still so much more I could talk about, but we're going to call it here. By now, you should have a decent handle on what lurks in the library level, what the Cult of the Canker is all about, what the Canker is, the motivations, and you should be getting some ideas in your head about how you might integrate your own DM style or GM style into running it. But yeah, any questions in chat, I can answer them for you. If you've been running it and you're stuck on something, let me know. Otherwise, I think I'm going to call it for tonight. Check back in 2 weeks. I'm changing my schedule. Instead of every week, I'm doing these GM preps every 2 weeks. And so that means in 2 weeks, we're going to cover the next level down, which is known as Belcora's Retreat, ominously. It's much, much smaller, but it holds some very major fights from the heroes as they close out the last chapter of the Abomination Vaults. So big thank you to Eni and Dalvin for hanging out with me in chat tonight. Big thanks to you for watching it. Again, if you're using this content and you're enjoying it, or you have any other questions, just hit me up on the YouTube. I'll be there to answer any questions you guys have. Otherwise, that's going to do it for me tonight on GM Prep. I am DMSteve, your GM. Join us Wednesdays. This Wednesday, we're going to be continuing playing the Abomination Vaults. My party is currently in the midst of level 3. They're going to head back up for a rest and recuperation because they're tapped out. They're going to come back down, and they're probably just 120 experience from leveling up. So I'm excited to see them take the step down into the 4th level, which means I'm going to be spending a lot of my time making sure I know every nook and cranny, and I'll share that knowledge with you. So see you guys on Wednesday for our dip into the Abomination Vaults, and see you guys back here in 2 weeks on Sunday. Bye, guys. Oh, wait. Sorry. I just got this new layout. I'm clicking the wrong button. Okay. Now, bye for real.